All right, so we are live, and I have a very special guest today. Her name is Trisha Cicero. She is a professional MMA fighter, and I'm going to let Trisha introduce herself and tell us about who she is and where she's at and what she's doing. Good morning, Trisha.
Good morning, Doc. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome.
So, as you mentioned, I'm a professional MMA fighter. I've been training in the martial arts for a long time, like over 25 years now.
Wow.
So almost my whole life. I started when I was 7 years old, and I started with Kenpo karate and just fell in love with it. Kickboxing fights as I was a teenager and in my early 20s. And then later on got an opportunity to start fighting MMA, and so that's where I'm at now. Besides that, I also do personal training as my career. I love teaching fitness, martial arts, health, nutrition, anything involving a healthy lifestyle around working out, around martial arts. So, yeah.
So how did you actually start with karate? Like, what got you into karate when you were younger?
I think it was a couple factors. I had a neighbor that was a year older than me, and she'd always come home with her karate uniform on, and she'd be doing her karate moves in the yard. And of course, I wanted to do everything like her because she was my cool older neighbor. And then I also loved Power Rangers, so yes. A little bit of both. I wanted to be like the Pink Ranger, obviously. So between that, and then also I was very, very shy. I was bullied, picked on a lot when I was young.
Really?
Yeah. I'm an only child, so growing up, I had a lot of older kids in the neighborhood on the bus, and so I was just very gullible, very naive. I just, was a very easy target and just very, very quiet. And my mom told me a story that they had taken me to see Santa Claus at the mall, and she had put me in the line and kind of was doing her shopping. And at that time, you could do that. You could leave your kids in the line and go do your shopping, and the kids just kept going up to Santa. And I guess she looked over a couple minutes later, and I'm still in the same spot, standing there crying as like all the other kids just keep pushing in front of me. And I was just standing there crying, not doing anything about it. So I think it was at that point when I was around 7 years old that my parents were like, okay, she wants to do it and she needs it for her confidence. So that's how I got into it.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think I was the Pink Ranger for like 4 years of Halloween. I only made it to my blue belt, I think. Blue or green belt, and then I stopped.
Yeah.
So then what was the transition for you, that big transition? I know a little bit more about you than some of the viewers obviously just yet, but how did you transition from Syracuse, New York, all the way down to Florida? Tell us a little bit about that.
So, I was very fortunate that growing up in the martial arts, I was a part of a martial arts organization that they had a chain of schools. And at that time, they had 3 or 4 schools, I think it was 3 at the time, in Syracuse, New York, karate schools, and then they had just opened a few schools down here in Fort Lauderdale and Lighthouse Point when I was in high school. And during that time, I was teaching karate classes to the kids at night, and I was just there as much as I could all the time. And when it came to thinking about, at that time, do I want to go to college? What is my career going to be? What do I want to do? I really saw a path to be a successful martial arts school owner because of the people that had done it before me, and a combination of the weather and the opportunity presented itself with coming down to Florida. So I moved down to Fort Lauderdale in 2005. I was 17. Wow. And left everything behind. I did have a lot of people that had already moved from Syracuse to Fort Lauderdale for the same reason in my organization. So I had a lot of friends down here already. I wasn't completely by myself, but I didn't have any family or anything. And I loved it. I loved it. I loved the weather. I loved teaching martial arts, and I really had a goal to open up my own martial arts school. And from, 17 to 23, for those 6 years, I really worked my butt off, 12, 13 hours a day, every day, training, teaching, studying, doing everything I could to get there. So, yeah.
And then, so what transitioned from more of that karate background to that MMA?
Yeah. Well, when I was 20, down here, I did a amateur kickboxing class, fight, sorry. And at the time, there was a promotion down here locally called Warriors Collide, and they had a bunch of kickboxing fights going on, and I was just, for some reason, I really, really wanted to fight. I don't know what is it that was in me at the time. I had fought an amateur kickboxing fight in New York when I was 14 years old. It didn't go my way. I lost my first fight when I was 14. It was amateur, exhibition type fight. And then I just kind of put it on the shelf. And when the opportunity presented itself when I was 20, I was like, okay, I think I want to do it again. And once I did it, I loved it. But at that time, I was starting to get very interested in MMA. And that was still before Ronda Rousey was in the UFC, but there were, female MMA fighters. There was Gina Carano, there was Chris Cyborg, there was female MMA. However, at that time, this was 15 years ago, MMA was not legal in Florida, and it wasn't legal in a lot of states. So I remember the promoter telling me, oh, we're going to have MMA fights soon, but not yet, just hang in there, hang in there. And it just got to a point where I realized, I didn't want to keep doing kickboxing. I wanted to do MMA. It just wasn't available for me down here at the time. So I just moved on, and I just, kept focusing on my career, kept working towards, owning a martial arts school. And fast forward years later, skipping way down the road here, but, when I was around 26 years old, I had an opportunity to start training at American Top Team. And this was like a dream come true of mine. And I started just by, going in. I wanted to learn more jiu-jitsu. And I really had no intention of competing or fighting at that time. I was just wanting to get more into jiu-jitsu. I thought it was a great place to learn, obviously, a great opportunity. And of course, once I got in there and I see Tisha Torres and Jessica Aguilar sparring in the cage while I'm in my little jiu-jitsu class, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's female MMA fighters. Oh my gosh, they're the pioneers. Oh, this is amazing. And little by little, as I started to train there more, I got kind of sucked in. And it was actually Tisha who encouraged me. She had invited me to come spar. She kind of like brought me into the pro team, her, Valerie Letourneau at the time, Jessica Aguilar. So I started just as like their bodies, their training partners, and I thought it was just cool to be there. Like, oh, cool, I get to help the pro MMA fighters. But then I just kind of took the leap and decided, you know what, I might as well try it. I have a chance to do it now when I didn't before, and I'll just see how it goes. If I like it, I'll keep going. If I don't like it, I'll stop. And, I ended up loving it.
So how many amateur fights did you have before going pro?
Just 4. I went 4-0 as an amateur. Yeah.
Wow. And so now let's talk about, I had a couple of questions. I'll kind of bridge this into it, but you were 4-0, and then when you first got pro, did you win your first fight or did you lose your first fight as a pro?
Lost.
How did you get through that? Like, how did you overcome that?
It was a little bit rough, yeah. Especially, coming off an undefeated amateur career. I had the XFN flyweight belt, and I had defended the belt on my 4th fight, and then I became pro. So it was a little bit of a blow. It was a split decision loss, and it was a very close fight that could have gone either way. I wasn't upset. I didn't feel like I got robbed. Of course, a lot of my teammates and coaches, no, you definitely won the fight. But if I'm to watch it right now, I'm going to say, it could have gone either way. I should have done a little bit more sooner, but it was very, very, very close. So I think because of that, because it was so close, I didn't take it super hard. It wasn't devastating. I was bummed out, but I think because it was so close, I was like, I almost had it. I didn't get shut out. I didn't get put to sleep or knocked out or anything like that. It was a close fight. But I made a lot of errors. And, then when I lost my second fight, that's when it really hit me. And that was the big blow. The first one was like, it was close. It could have gone my way, but it didn't. Oh, maybe I got robbed. Oh, it's just the one judge, blah, blah, blah. And when I lost the second pro fight, that was like a reality check.
That was a big blow. And so getting through that, because I feel like now I met you, how many fights ago now? 3, 4? I don't remember, 3 or 4 fights ago. And I remember you were at a point where like you had just come off like a major loss. and then
Yeah.
changing your team around, and you were changing a lot of things that you were doing to kind of bump you up to where you are now. And it's amazing to see you win, the past couple of years, and you've been on this winning streak. So what was that transition, that kind of turned in the people around you and that, that career mindset where you're like, I have to change something if I want to go further with this?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, the first fight, it's like, I didn't really take ownership of it. The second fight was a tough fight. It was a tough loss. I won my third fight, so I was 1-2, and then I lost the next one after that. So now I was 1-3, and it was at that point where I decided, okay, I have to make a change. Right. If I'm going to keep going with this, I knew, I'm not going to give up yet. I'm going to give it one more chance. I'm going to make some changes, and if I get another win, I'm going to just keep trying to even out my record. I'm going to try to climb my way back up. But if I don't make the right changes, or if I lose the next fight or get injured, you know what? That's it. I'm just going to stop. That was definitely the point I was at. And, as much as there's a lot of amazing coaches that I was working with, sometimes the coach isn't right for you. So, I don't want to say anything bad about any of the coaches I was working with at the time. They just didn't fit for me. And I didn't feel like I was getting the attention or the care, or if I had questions or concerns, I felt like they weren't being addressed before a fight. And I felt like, it didn't feel right. And at that time, I had switched and started doing my striking with Roger Crawl, American Top Team Sunrise. And that made a huge difference. Just in my confidence, changing my strategy. I felt like he really cared about who I was as a fighter, and not just giving me some cookie cutter plan because that's the way he likes to do it. Right. It was more, hey, Trisha, these are the things you're good at already. Why don't we build off of these? Okay, and then we're going to build off of what you're already good at and make you even better at these other areas. Versus I think before, where I was just trying to fit into so many other people's style, and I was kind of losing who I was as a martial artist. So I think that was a major key. Taking the leap and making that change, I think, was really the catalyst of turning my record around.
And then from Roger, is that when you had started strength and conditioning, or were you always doing strength and conditioning?
So with my strength and conditioning, I started that as an amateur with Ahmed at Simmons.
Okay.
Yeah, but we had a little break in the action for a little bit, and I had also trained with Coach Ken for a little bit of a time in the beginning of my pro career as well. And then when Ahmed was able to open up his own facility, that's when I started training with Ahmed. So I can't remember exactly when that was. It was whenever he opened up his last location. Facility. Yeah, in Fort Lauderdale, a few years ago. And yes, absolutely, Ahmed's part of the winning team. I trust Ahmed with my life, as you know. And, he's definitely a big part of, my physical strength and conditioning, and just making sure that I always am ready as I can be physically going into the fight.
Now with Ahmed, I think that you've done a tremendous job in what we've talked about your whole career, about, dialing you in and not killing you in terms of like the significant weight loss that you have to go through. So I'm sure you were really happy about that. What is that like when he's got to bring you down and dial you in? Is he really like tailoring it towards you, like obviously focusing on your, kind of like how Roger's doing it, your strengths and how not to kill you all the way out? Because a lot of these fighters get killed with the weight loss, with the shoulder cut and stuff like that. And I feel like the last, at least since I've known you and Ahmed, I feel like you barely have to. I mean, I know you cut a lot of weight and stuff like that, but I feel like you transitioned so easily in there. So what was the change that you had to do?
I think it's a lot of communication. I think every fight we get better the more we communicate with each other. And that's the major key. He can lay out a plan. He can give me the numbers of what I'm supposed to be eating that day, that week, or what I'm supposed to be eating for amount of carbs on a sparring day versus a wrestling day, or whatever the scenario is. But I think the biggest thing that we really improved on over the years is if I wake up in the morning and I'm feeling like crap, and maybe it's a low carb day, and I'm saying, Ahmed, I feel like crap today. I don't know how I'm going to make it through the day. I have this training, I have this training, I have this training. and he will make those adjustments on the fly. He'll say, okay, you know what, add 50 grams of carbs, take it, eat your carbs at this time, make sure you drink this, add this supplement, and boom, 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 right away we make the changes. So I think it's having that rigid flexibility. There is a plan that we're trying to stick to, but I'm listening to my body better instead of just pushing through and killing myself no matter what. And I'm also open with him of saying like, hey, I'm not trying to be a wimp. I'm just telling you today, I can't even get out of bed, or I don't even know how I have a really hard sparring today. I really don't know how I'm going to make it through, or, hey, my weight's really stuck and I've been following our macros for the last 3 days. What's going on? Okay, you're going to do a refeed now. Let's bump it up. I don't want your cortisol to go down. I don't want you to be stressed. So I think as we kind of worked our communication, I think that's what's really made the difference.
And I think that's super key. I come from a bodybuilding background, and I think it's super key for, your coach to be on top of you like that, to kind of know exactly what your day is like, how your training is, how you're feeling, if you had a crazy day. So I think that's super important in terms of the fight world, because like you said, if you have a day where you're trying to just push through because, you're on some cookie cutter diet with like low carbs or whatever, then you run the risk of injury too.
Yep.
So that's super important that you have that. And I think that's great. I mean, every fight I've watched you so far, you guys are you are the most shredded person on there, on that weight cut. So you've done a tremendous job with that. And I applaud the both of you on that.
Thank you.
And, another one that was key, especially this last fight of yours, the Invicta fight. I saw a huge, tremendous change from the fight that you fought at the Hard Rock to now, with incorporating Derek Santos in. So
yes.
Tell us about how that changed for you, and how you kind of fell into working with Derek, and then what that's done for your fighting.
Absolutely. So yeah, like I said, a few years ago, the first major key change was training with Roger, and Roger is more complete striking. He's going to lay out the plan, the strategy. Obviously, both Coach Roger and I come from the same Kenpo karate background, so it's a lot of kicks, things like that. But I still felt like my boxing was missing. And since the beginning of my fighting career, my boxing has never been my strength. Definitely not. If you ever watch my old amateur fights on YouTube, I'm like the rock'em sock'em. I just came throwing crazy punches recklessly until they backed up into the cage. That was my boxing. And I knew it was a hole. And I had worked with various boxing coaches over the years. And same thing, like I was saying before, I never felt like I was progressing as much as I needed to. I still felt like there was things missing in my technique. I felt like I needed more attention that I just couldn't get where I was at. And I had tried so many different coaches, and I was just beyond frustrated. And I knew of Derek, and I felt like, probably because of my own lack of confidence at the time, I felt like Derek was like unattainable. I felt like, well, Derek trains with the best people in the world. Derek trains Pitbull. He trains Daya. He's not going to have time to train me. Like, why would Derek have time to train me? I'm not going to be able to train with him. But I've been following Maureen, and I knew Maureen, from over the years, being a part of the MMA community as well. And so I sent Maureen a message a little over a year ago, and I said, hey, I really need help with my boxing. I don't mind coming to you. What do you charge? Can you help me? Can you train me? I really need that like one-on-one attention. And she was like, well, I don't train people. Now she does. At the time, she was just very strictly like, nope, I don't train people, but let me talk to my coach and see if he'll train you. And, she kind of got me in with Derek, and we're coming up just over a year. It was like maybe, a year and a couple weeks ago that I started working with Derek, and I feel like I've been there forever. It's only been a year, but they're like part of my family now. So yeah, that was huge, and I feel like with Derek, I've actually improved so much in 1 year, to make up for the last 6 years that I wasn't really learning or progressing. I mean, it's incredible.
Right. And like I said, I mean, watching your fight at the Hard Rock live, and then, watching your last Invicta fight, that was a big thing that like you really owned her. And I mean, I got to watch you spar one-on-one with Maureen, and you did tremendous with that. So like, again, you're going with a 2-time world champ.
Yeah.
And you're standing up, and you're giving her, a run, which is amazing. So big props on that. So let's transition into this. Let's talk about a few questions I have here. One of the biggest ones is, I know you just went through ACL surgery almost a week ago, week and a half.
Yeah, coming up on 2 weeks on Tuesday.
Now, I've known you for a little bit, and you've gone through a couple of nice knee injuries, I'd say, in the past few years. So how is this one different in terms of, where did you have to put your mentality with it? Where did you have to put yourself in the last couple of weeks? And I've treated a lot of athletes with ACL tears, and I feel like every patient responds differently, mentally, physically. So tell us a little bit about, when that happened and where you're at now, and how you kind of had to change your mental aspect on this whole thing, and how you started your healing process.
Yeah. It definitely was a huge blow. I don't think anybody can be happy about having ACL surgery. No. And it's the first surgery I've ever had to have in my life. I'm a complete newbie. Okay. I've never been in the hospital for anything in my life. I've only had stitches on my face, which you get after the fight, the fight doctor. I've never been in the hospital for anything. So it was quite a shock mentally and physically for me. And I did do a lot of prehab before the surgery. I think I had maybe a month before the surgery between the injury and when I got operated on. So, I'm hoping that's going to help a lot in the rehab process, all the strengthening that we did, all of the years of conditioning with Ahmed. Hopefully will help me get back into it sooner. But as far as the mindset goes, it's definitely, it's not easy. There's good days, there's bad days. As the pain lessens mentally, it gets a little bit easier. Yeah, the first couple of days were really horrendous. But I'm just trying to take it one day at a time. And the thing that really helps me is seeing how many athletes I know personally and how many fighters just in general go through ACL surgeries and come back a year later and fight. I know he didn't get the win last night and it really wasn't a great performance, but Tony Ferguson's an example of somebody who did come back from ACL surgery and in the past fought well afterwards. And there was somebody else last night. I forget who it was, but there was another fighter. Cub Swanson last night. This was his first fight since tearing his ACL, and I think he blew out everything, not just his ACL, a year ago.
A full blowout, yeah.
Yeah, and he looked incredible. So it's seeing somebody like that, I saw how devastating that injury was, and then seeing him a year later, how he fought last night was wow, okay. So just keeping people like that in the forefront of my mind, definitely keeps things more positive and just focusing on the little victories, that's it, day by day.
Another one is Macy Barber. She's super young. Yeah. She's coming back strong too. I don't know when she's supposed to fight next, but I know that was at her, in her career as a young athlete. That was a devastating loss. It was a devastating moment for her. But it's, as a physical therapist, it's probably the most common thing that I deal with. And the crazy part is we can do all the strength and conditioning. We can do all the right things, day in and day out. We can do knee cars. We can do footwork. We can do all this stuff. But sometimes in the MMA world, it's a contact sport. And it happens. I mean, you guys are in these locks that are supposed to, to injure someone. So it's definitely a devastating injury, but I feel like each athlete I've ever had to go through that ACL surgery, they come out stronger. They come out more aware of their body. So I always say it's recovery, rehab is a process of discovery, not recovery, right? It's really about, learning more about yourself, learning about how you're going to get through this mentally, physically, emotionally, and, how you're going to come through on the other end. So I give you a lot of credit. I know this was hard because you were supposed to this fight was important to you, right? Because you could have transitioned into the UFC. Yeah. Well, that's still up for grabs too, so that's a thing that you got to make sure you keep in the back of your head as well. Yeah. That this isn't it. Okay. So let's go into some other things. Let's talk about your work with your athletes, yourself, and the people that you train with. How did you get into, opening up your own kind of personal training avenue, and what you've been doing with that? Because you've been growing with that for the past, at least a couple of years that I've known you.
Yeah.
And how are you helping people with that? Because I had a couple people ask about you being a professional fighter, but also having the time to, train others and help them with their nutrition and stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah. It's really an amazing career to have, to also be a fighter. And I know a lot of fighters that, are at kind of the same place I'm at, where we're not making a living yet off of fighting. You have to have some kind of other income if you don't have someone supporting you in that regards. So personal training is great because I can be very flexible with the schedule. If my client needs to change a time, or if I need to change the time, if I enter a camp and all of a sudden I'm sparring on Tuesday, Thursday mornings, and I need to adjust a client, my clients are always really great to work with me and figure out a different day and time. So as far as being a fighter and doing it, I think it's one of the best careers to have as a professional fighter, because you do have that flexibility. And it keeps me busy. It definitely, instead of just, I know downtime is important too, but it definitely keeps me busy in between the training times. So that's a really good part of it. And how I got into it, as I mentioned, I was teaching martial arts for many years. I did actually open up a school in Plantation, a karate school that I ran for about 7-8 months back in 2011. Had a little bit of a falling out with the team and the organization. Some stuff happened there. And I was lost for a little while after that. I had taught at some other karate school. I had taught some fitness classes at a gym. And at that time, I wasn't a certified personal trainer, but I had been teaching martial arts and fitness since I was 14. So I did end up getting my personal training certification and started teaching some group fitness classes, and just kind of really fell in love with that aspect of just teaching fitness, but still finding a way to incorporating kickboxing or martial arts into it. And then over the years, it just kind of grew. And I think
No. I might have lost you on that. All right, we're back.
So, I was working at a gym teaching fitness classes and, working for somebody else. And through the encouragement of one of my very good friends, she just said, listen, you're worth more than what you're getting paid right now. Your value is so much higher than just being paid like some teenager at a gym would be paid helping out. Right. So she kind of gave me the nudge to really start my own thing and start Cicero Defense and Training. And it's gone through a lot of different phases. Right now, because I have been focusing on my professional MMA career, it's really, especially with COVID right now, more of an in-home personal training. And I'm about to start up another round of online personal training as well, because of the climate that we're in right now with COVID. And many people not being able to go to the gym, not feeling comfortable going to a gym. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And I'm taking this opportunity with my injury to really try to grow that part of the business more.
And I've seen a lot of people start doing that, and a lot of people are doing very great with that, the online training.
Yeah.
Especially during this time. So that's awesome. So going off of that too, do you see, because this is something that I get every time I actually have done a podcast, or I'm going to do a podcast with an athlete, I get a lot of questions on, well, what are you going to do after your career? You know what I mean? So is this something that you want to transition into or continue to do, or do you want to try and open up something again?
Yeah, I definitely see in the future, opening up something again. When, where, with who, that's all to be determined,
of course.
Over the next few years, depending on how things go. But I like that I'm able to still do what I love right now. I'm still able to make a good living doing it, by training people in person, by doing it online. So thankfully for me, I do see a lot of athletes, especially a lot of young athletes, run into that which is amazing. They have the opportunity now to fight when they're 19, 20 years old. Right. And I feel like if I had that opportunity when I was 20, I would have ran with it too. Right. However, at that time, when I was 20, there was no Ronda Rousey in the UFC, and Dana White was saying women will never fight in the UFC. So in my brain, I was thinking, you know what's the point? I could keep fighting for nothing, or I could keep working on my career and try to open up a school. So I went with the career, and thankfully, I'll always have that now. So now I have kind of the career part set, and now it's just about going as far as I can as an athlete, and whenever that's not a possibility as a professional athlete anymore, I still have my business, and then I can grow and put more time into it. So,
and that's super important, and this is something I talked about with one of my NFL guys was, his whole thing was how much longer, he had in the NFL or the XFL that he was transitioning into. And, he said, it's sad. He's like, there's a lot of people that are in this world and almost forget that, like, after these years, we have to figure out something,
Yeah.
So he had started this nonprofit organization for kids, and he's doing a lot of, he is actually looking into the rehab route. So it's funny how there's some people that don't think about that. And then there's people that really are like, as soon as they're in that professional level, they're like, okay, I know this isn't forever, but what can I do to make something out of it,
Yeah.
So another question I got, this one's kind of off topic of what we've been talking about, but people want to know what it's like to train with the top tier, like JJ and Torres and Amanda and stuff. So everyone wants to know what it's like to have to train at that level with these girls, but you're at that level. So
yeah, it's amazing. I definitely, I appreciate every time I get to step on the mat with, Amanda or Nina or Joanna, Amanda Ribas, Marina Moroz, like all of these girls that are in the top of the UFC that I get the pleasure to train with. And it's an honor for me to be their training partners and to push them as much as they push me. It's incredible. It's definitely like a dream come true. I've always been a UFC fan before I ever started fighting. I loved watching fights. And, now that I get to train with these girls and push them and be at the same level, it's incredible. It's definitely a different level of mindset and intensity. And I can see why Amanda Nunes is the GOAT. Just by you can train with her and you can see, oh, this is why she's the greatest in the world. You can train with Joanna and see, this is why she's one of the baddest strawweights on the planet. Right. Like, wow, it's a different level of mentality. It's the way they handle their losses, the way they handle their wins, the way they handle everyday training, the way they handle their good days, their bad days. I think so much of it is the mental game, and that's what I really, besides the physical training, which is incredible, but it's the mental part that I really learn the most from training with them.
Do you have to pick their brains about that, like that mental fortitude that you have to kind of get into after days like that, like hard days and losses and stuff like that?
Yes, for sure. Sometimes it's just learning by being in the room with them, right, and seeing them actually have a bad day, because they have bad days too. Yeah. But I'll never forget a couple of years ago, talking to Amanda Nunes, and her and Nina have always been so encouraging for me in my career, either when I was at my lows, when I've had my wins. They've been to so many of my fights. There's times during my fights as an amateur where I could hear Amanda from the back of the room louder than my corner screaming at me. So I really appreciate everything they've done for me and so much that I've learned from them. And I remember her talking about her loss to Miesha Tate. Not Miesha, I'm sorry, Kat Zingano, when she lost to Kat Zingano. So when she lost to Kat Zingano, I remember her saying the changes she made after that fight in her mentality, in her confidence in herself, and really just how she was able to turn that around and go on the winning streak that she had to become the champion. It was just incredible. And also to see, it hurt me at times as a friend of hers, as a friend and a fan, to see sometimes how the media wouldn't really pay much attention to Amanda in the beginning. It was all about Ronda,
yeah,
come back, and nobody was promoting man. I was like pissed for her, like, what the hell? She's the champion, like, but it didn't bother her. It like just rolled off the shoulder, like not a care in the world. And to see how she has handled like being a champion or being criticized or handling a loss, like she's always happy, she's always positive, she's always just herself, and that's what I love about her. So that's a big one.
she's definitely someone that, you know, I mean, I've just watched from the sidelines, but someone who just, like you said, she just kind of, it's like, you know, she likes to mow her lawn and she like, you know what I mean? She's
Yeah.
granted, and she's just, you know, I mean, that's awesome, because you can see, like, here's another instance, like John Jones, like he likes to just be in the dirt and stuff, and
Yeah.
when you're a fan and you watch stuff like that, you're like, wow, okay, so even like the goats, they like to just chill out and be with their family sometimes, and like that's okay. Like you don't need to be go all the time.
But when they're in training, the one thing I'll say that I've learned, especially like watching Kayla Harrison, who's been at our gym now for a few years, two-time Olympian, two-time gold medal Olympian in judo. Watching her, Ioana, Amanda, you know, three of the best women I can say in the world that I've ever trained with. They are competitive, and they are always trying to win. They are always going to try to win the round. They're always going to try to win the wrestling scenario drill. I mean, it is like to the death, you know, especially I would say Ioana and Kayla. They're very, very, very competitive. Like it's everything's win or lose, and they're going to win every single match. But I think having that like mindset of like practicing winning, like that's something I've learned from them, because I think sometimes I'm too much of like, I want to be nice. I don't want to hurt my training partner. Oh, it's just training. No. You have to freaking go in there to win. It doesn't matter if it's wrestling class or if it's fight day. Like you have to win. So that's another big one.
And that's a huge, like you said, that's a huge mindset. Like every day you're going in, and like again, just if you're just drilling, you're like, I got to win. I have to win. You know?
Yep.
That's huge. So with American Top Team, what do you think is, when you do American Top Team, Coconut Creek, and Sunrise, correct?
Yes.
What is the difference between the two when you have to go from one place to the next?
A lot. It's yeah, definitely. American Top Team, Coconut Creek, you know, it's like a 50,000 square foot facility. The best fighters in the world are walking past you or training on the mat with you. You have the highest level of training partners, the highest level of coaches. It's a mega center, you know, it's gigantic, and it can be easy to get lost in the crowd, especially if you're one of the up-and-coming fighters. So I think that's why it's important, you know, I think that's why it's a benefit for me to have American Top Team Sunrise, because, you know, have a little bit more of that attention, a little bit more of that connection, you know, and I'm training along regular people, you know, that have 9-to-5 jobs that aren't fighters. And I love that you can learn and have great training with both. Right. You know, that with the guy that's, you know, training 9-to-5, but he's coming in on Saturday morning to help everybody spar, and with the people that are, you know, the baddest fighters on the planet, there's benefits to both. You know, sometimes you have to be the hammer, sometimes you have to be the nail, and it's hard to be the hammer sometimes at American Top Team. You know, it's good to have a place to be the hammer a little bit, but also sometimes you get humbled. Sometimes you make a mistake that somebody capitalizes, and you're like, oh crap, wait a second, I can't let him get that on me, or you know. So yeah, it's definitely benefits to both. The Sunrise is a very family environment with Coach Roger. You know, it's a very family-oriented school. So it's a really special place. So I love it there as well. So
after you recover from your ACL surgery, what is your timeline looking like? What are your goals? And, you know, tell us a little bit about what you hope to achieve in the next year.
Right now, I'm trying not to put too much time stamps on anything. You know, I don't want to rush the process. Definitely, I've seen several teammates, and I know of a lot of people that have tried to come back too soon. You know, I hear everybody say that at that 6-month point, you think you're fine, and then you go and do something that maybe your doctor or your trainer says not to do, but you feel like you're good enough to roll or to hit pads or to do whatever, and they blow it out. And I do not want to go through this again. So this is one and done here. So, you know, I'm just going to, you know, listen to Ahmed, listen to you, listen to, you know, my coaches. And when I'm healed and I'm ready, that's when I'll put myself in a camp. So, you know, I think the typical like 9 to 12 months is really the timeline, right? You know?
Yep.
You know, so hopefully by next fall, I'll be training and, you know, getting myself in shape to start a camp. And yeah, I mean, if I can, of course, in a perfect world, if I can fight next year, that would be incredible. I don't want to have too much expectations because I know how the fight game is. You know, I could be ready to fight, I could be healed and in shape, but Invicta might not have a place for me on a card. You know, it's just, you never know. Or I could have a scheduled fight and it falls through. So I think the fight world is so unpredictable. I try not to have too much attachment. I really want to focus on little day by day, month by month goals. Obviously, the bigger picture is to fight next year, but I don't want to get so attached to it that either I try to rush and make it happen because, no, I said I have to fight by this time. So, you know, just trying to take it little by little here.
Now, is your ultimate goal to be in the UFC?
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. I mean, you have so many people around you saying that you should be up there. You should have already been up there, but I think that, you know, the way you've really handled yourself in your career, it's admiring because it just goes to show that, like, with your hard work and your persistence and the person that you are, like, like the way you said it before, you know, you're training with, you know, the pioneers, but you yourself are a pioneer if you think about it. You know, you started at 17 years old in this whole thing. And you're right, women were not a big part of the fight world at all. I mean, I remember, yeah, I remember too, you know, it was very unheard of. You know, even to this day, I was on Maureen's podcast when her and Jessica were putting the Canvas podcast together. And, you know, like you said, Jessica was really a pioneer in the beginning, and so was Maureen. And like you talk about how, you know, females didn't get paid enough, still don't get paid enough, especially in the boxing world too. You know, the UFC level is, you know, starting to come around. But I remember in New York, I think by the time I moved down here in 5 years ago, that's when the guys that I had done training with, like Ryan LaFleur, Dennis Bermudez, like all those guys, they were fighting, and Chris Weidman, they were fighting for MMA to be legal in New York.
Yeah.
And then that finally passed through. And so that was only a couple years ago.
Yep.
You know, so it's amazing to see where these females have gone in their sport. And I mean, you're part of that process. So I'm really looking forward to seeing you up in the UFC. That's for sure.
Me too. Me too.
All right. So I know we are at the end. I just want to thank you very, very much for coming on today. I'm definitely going to have you on again because I want to talk about your recovery as your weeks go on, because I think it's important that a lot of people hear from other athletes, you know, how their recovery is going. And you posted something the other day that was actually really interesting, which was, what did you say exactly? That your recovery is not anyone else's recovery, right? And that's a big thing to take from, because like you said, some people will be like back at it at 6 months, right?
Yeah.
Some people it takes a year. Some people it takes 2 weeks to be able to bend their knee past a certain degree.
Yeah.
Some people have it right out of the get-go, you know? So everyone's recovery is different. And I do think it's important, though, that other athletes, you know, whether it's the MMA world, whether it's football, whatever that I'm around, that they hear from someone like you, you know, how you're getting through it, how you're overcoming it. Because as the weeks go on, it's going to get easier and it will get difficult too. But how you, like you said, that mental fortitude, how you overcome that is going to be very important. So I'd really like to have you on again in the next few months to see like where you've come and how you gotten through the last couple of months, and, you know, getting yourself back into the ring again, which is, it's very important. Like you said, nothing to be rushed. It shouldn't be rushed, but you do have a great team around you that's going to hold you accountable for that too.
Yeah.
And that's super important for people to kind of keep you in check at that point.
Yeah.
Because some athletes do. Some athletes want to get right back in, and I deal with them myself. And I'm like, look, I know you want to get back in, but please give me that like 1 more week. Just give me 1 more week, and I'll let you go back in, because, you know, that's you talk about a big mishap. If, you know, is that training day really important, or can you wait another week before you get back in and rush things?
Yeah.
So I definitely want to have you back on so we can talk about how you're doing with your recovery and stuff.
Absolutely.
All right. So I am going to stop recording and we'll just talk for a second. I just want to thank you again, Trisha, for coming on. I'm going to put Trisha's bio in the bottom. Do you want to tell everyone where they can find you, either Instagram, Twitter? I'm not sure what you use primarily.
Instagram, just my name, Trisha Cicero is my Instagram handle, so that's where I give all the most updates. So yeah.
Okay, and how can people contact you if they want to do online training or they're looking for nutrition plans and stuff like that?
Yep, through Instagram. Yep, I'll be releasing more content and more information on that soon, so you'll know when you can, sign up and get started, or just, shoot me a DM if you're interested in starting sooner.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Trisha.
Thank you.